First grade, today we are going to read Little Red Riding Hood. We are going to recall information about stories read aloud. We will identify the consequences of main characters' actions in a folktale. We will demonstrate an understanding of the word cherished, and we will illustrate and describe an event from a folktale. Our key vocabulary are cherished, grateful, and sly. Cherished is a verb, and it means loved and valued. The farmer cherished the goose's golden eggs. Grateful is an adjective, and it means thankful. Bernalis was so grateful when a kind stranger found her puppy. Sly, adjective, okay? And sly means sneaky and secretive. The sly fox tried to trick the hens. Okay, and you can see that little kitty is trying to be sneaky and secretive, trying not to be seen. So, remember, people all over the world love listening to and telling stories. Some of the stories told around the world are quite similar to each other, even though the stories originated in different places. Although the variations come from different countries or lands, the characters have similar adventures and face similar conflicts. Remember that the first set of stories were fairy tales with main characters who had something in common about what happens to them in the end. Do you remember what happened to all three of those people at the end? They married royalty. Remember, Cinderella married the prince, the girl with the red slippers married the pharaoh, and Billy Beg married the princess. All right. Where did those stories originate? Where did Cinderella originate? France. How about the girl with the red slippers? Egypt. And Billy Beg? Ireland. The second set of stories were folk tales with main characters that had something in common related to their size. What is it that they have in common? They were all what? The size of our thumb, right? Now, where did Tom Thumb originate? Do you remember where Tom Thumb originated? In England. How about Thumbelina? Where did Thumbelina originate? Denmark. And Isanboshi? Japan. So today's read aloud is originated in a country called Germany many, many years ago. So this is the continent of Europe. We've talked about Europe plenty of times. And this is the country Germany. The folktale you will hear today has been told orally all around the world for hundreds of years. The story was published long, long ago by two German brothers, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. Remember our key vocabulary: cherished, grateful, and sly. Listen carefully to find out what directions the little girl receives from her mother and what happens to the little girl when she does not follow them. Once there was a sweet little girl who was loved by all who knew her, but most of all by her grandmother, who could not do enough for her. Once the grandmother sent the girl a cloak with a red velvet hood. The little girl was so pleased with the cloak that she cherished it and wore it every day. Remember, cherished means loved and valued. So she came to be known as Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother said to her, "Little Red Riding Hood, your grandmother is feeling sick. I would like you to go and visit her. Take her some of the cakes we baked yesterday. They will do her good. Go quickly before it gets too warm. But remember to stay on the path and do not stop along the way." So what are Little Red Riding Hood's mother's instructions? Stay on the path and don't stop, right? "I will do just as you say, Mother," promised Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood started on her way. Her grandmother lived in a house in the woods a half-hour's walk from the village. Little Red Riding Hood had only just entered the wood when she came upon a wolf. The wolf longed to eat Little Red Riding Hood for lunch, but Little Red Riding Hood did not know what a wicked animal he was, so she was not afraid of him. So the wolf has bad intentions, right? He wants to eat Little Red Riding Hood. But Little Red Riding Hood doesn't know that, which is why she's not afraid of him. "Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood," he said. "Good morning, Wolf," she answered kindly. "And where are you going so early?" he asked. "To my granny's house." "And what's that in your basket?" "Some cakes we baked yesterday. Grandmother is sick, and the cakes will make her feel better." "And where does your grandmother live?" Why do you think the wolf is asking her so many questions? Do you think he's trying to figure out how he can figure out how to eat her? "In the woods, a short distance from here, in a cottage under 3 big oak trees," said Little Red Riding Hood. Said the wolf, as he thought to himself, "What a tasty morsel this little girl would be, but she's not big enough for a meal. I must find a way to eat her and her grandmother too." What characters have we met so far? So we've met the mother, Little Red Riding Hood, and the wolf, right? And where is Little Red Riding Hood going and why? She's going to her grandmother's house, right? To visit her and try to make her feel better because grandma's not feeling well. And what is it that the wolf wants to do? Eat Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. The wolf walked along beside Little Red Riding Hood for a while. Then he said, "Why, look at all the pretty flowers. Why don't you stop and rest and pick some of them? You're hurrying along as if you were late for school, yet the birds are singing and everything is so pleasant here in the woods." Little Red Riding Hood looked up and saw the sunlight dancing in the leaves of the trees. She saw the lovely flowers around her, and she thought, "I am sure that grandmother would be pleased if I took her a bunch of fresh flowers." Forgetting what she had promised her mother, she left the path and went off on her way into the woods to pick some flowers. So, what was it that Little Red Riding Hood promised her mom? That she would stick to the path and she would go straight to her grandma's house, right? Is that what she's doing? No. Each time she picked one, she saw others even prettier farther on, and so she strayed deeper and deeper into the woods. The word strayed means to go in a direction that is away from the place where you should be. So, thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up, yes. Thumbs down, no. Is Little Red Riding Hood following her mom's directions? Big thumbs down. No, she is not. She is not following mom's directions. As for the wolf, he hurried straight to grandmother's cottage and knocked on the door. "Who's there?" said a little voice. "It is I, Little Red Riding Hood," said the wolf, trying to sound like a little girl. "Oh, lift the latch and let yourself in, dear," said the old woman. "I am too weak to get out of bed." The wolf lifted the latch and swung open the door. Before grandmother could realize what was happening, the wolf gobbled her up in one mouthful. Then the sly wolf dressed himself in her nightcap and nightgown, and with a wicked grin he got into bed and pulled up the covers. It was quite the disguise. Remember, a disguise is a set of clothes or other things you wear so that other people won't recognize you. Hey, was there another story that we've read this year about a wolf in a disguise? Yeah, the wolf in sheep's clothing. Okay, so why do you think that the wolf is dressing like the grandmother? To trick Little Red. And why was the wolf described as sly for doing that? Remember, sly means sneaky and secretive. All right. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood had picked all the flowers she could carry and found her way back to the path. She walked on quickly until she came to the grandmother's house. She was so surprised to find the door open, and as she stepped inside, she felt very strange. "Oh dear," she said to herself. "This morning I was so glad to be coming to see my grandmother. Why do I feel so frightened now?" Have you ever felt strange all of a sudden? What do you think your body is trying to tell you when you get a feeling like that? Maybe that something's not quite right. She took a deep breath and called out, "Good morning, grandmother." But there was no answer. She went up to the bed. There she saw her grandmother, or so she thought. The wolf had pulled up the covers under his chin and pulled the nightcap down to his eyes. Little Red Riding Hood thought her grandmother looked very strange indeed. "Oh, Granny," she said, "what big ears you have."
"The better to hear you with, my dear,"
said the wolf. Said Little Red Riding Hood. "Granny must be very sick indeed, for her voice is much deeper than it used to be." "And Granny, what big eyes you have."
"The better to see you with, my dear."
"And Grandmother, what big teeth you have."
"The better to eat you,"
cried the wolf as he sprang out of bed and swallowed Little Red Riding Hood up in one big gulp. After his meal, the wolf was feeling stuffed. He lay down on the bed and went to sleep and began to snore very loudly. A hunter who was passing by the cottage heard the snoring. "My," he thought, "the old woman sounds terrible. I'd better look inside and check on her." The hunter walked inside and saw the wolf. He instantly noticed the wolf's big belly and realized that the wolf had eaten the old woman. He knew he had to set her free. The hunter set them free, and out jumped Little Red Riding Hood and Granny. "Oh, I'm so grateful that you saved us," said Little Red Riding Hood. Granny, too, thanked the hunter for his kindness. When the wolf woke up, he was so shocked or surprised and upset that to see all the people standing before him that he ran away, never to be seen again. Little Red Riding Hood sat down with her grandmother and the hunter, and together they ate the cakes Little Red Riding Hood had brought. And Little Red Riding Hood said to herself, "After this I shall always do as my mother tells me, and I shall never leave the path again, not even to pick pretty flowers." So what lesson did Little Red Riding Hood learn? To listen to her mama, right? Okay, guys, that was the end of that story. If you need a break before comprehension questions and word work, hop on up and go ahead and do that. Okay, why is the main character called Little Red Riding Hood? The main character is called Little Red Riding Hood because she always wears a cloak with a red velvet hood that her grandmother made for her. What were the instructions that Mother gave to Little Red Riding Hood? Mother's instructions were to stay on the path and not stop along the way, right? Did Little Red Riding Hood follow her mother's directions? No, she does not follow her mother's instructions. What does she do instead? Instead of following Mother's directions, she stops to talk to the wolf and pick flowers, right? Why does the wolf tell Little Red Riding Hood to pick the flowers? The wolf tells Little Red Riding Hood to pick the flowers and enjoy the beautiful day so that he can run ahead to the grandmother's house and eat her before Little Red Riding Hood gets there, right? What was the wolf's disguise? The wolf's disguise is to wear one of the grandmother's nightgowns, her nightcap, and her glasses. Would you have been fooled by that disguise? I don't think that I would be, but I'm not sure. What does the wolf do to the grandmother and later to Little Red Riding Hood? The wolf eats them. How does the hunter who saves the grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood discover the wolf in the first place? He hears the wolf snoring and goes to check on the grandma, right? So folktales sometimes teach lessons, just like fables do. Is there a lesson or something we can learn and use in our own lives from this folktale? How about don't talk to strangers and follow your parents' instructions, right? Okay, let's do some word work. In the read aloud, you heard the little girl was so pleased with the cloak that she cherished it and wore it every day. I want you to say the word cherished with me. Cherished. Now I want you to whisper voice. Cherished. Now I want you to robot voice. Cherished. Cherished means loved and valued. Little Red Riding Hood cherished her grandmother and went to visit her while she was sick. Have you ever cherished something or someone? I want you to try to use the word cherished when you tell about it. And I want you to remember that because you're going to do something with that, with whatever it is that you cherish in just a bit. What's the word we've been talking about? Cherished. Good. All right, let's make sure that we have completed our learning objectives for today. So we recalled information about stories read aloud. We identified the consequences, so what happened to the main character, of the main character's actions in a folktale, right? So because she didn't listen, she got eaten by a wolf. We were able to define and use the word cherished. And in just a little bit, you're going to illustrate and describe an event from a folktale. Okay. Awesome job, guys. See you next time.